We start tonight with a plane that got turned upside down. Scary moments out of Toronto when a Delta Airlines plane flips over and lands on its roof on the tarmac. At least 17 people were injured, including a child. Today's crash follows a string of recent aviation disasters and close calls in the U.S. We still don't know the exact reason why that plane flipped upside down. So let's bring in Devin Feely, who is following the very latest on this investigation.
Yeah, Ryan, these images, they tell the story. Imagine being a passenger on this plane that ended up upside down on the runway after a rough landing. There were 80 people on board. Thankfully, all of them survived. The weather conditions were likely a factor in this crash and will be a focus of the investigation. Now, take a look at the plane. Belly up, the wheels still intact, the snow blowing on the runway. This was a Delta flight. It was operated by a regional carrier, Endeavor. It flew out of Minneapolis. Passengers described a rough landing, with the plane eventually flipping upside down. CBS News senior transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve describes the aftermath.
The passenger area of the plane remained intact fully when whatever went wrong, and it went wrong with enough force, it appears, to have ripped the wings and the tail off the airplane, and it came to rest there on a runway in Toronto.
The plane was carrying 76 passengers, 4 crew members. One of the people on board took the cell phone video showing passengers evacuating the plane after the crash. One by one, they exited the overturned plane. Amazing, really, to see so many people walking away appearing to be okay. Firefighters sprayed water on the plane, dousing some small fires that had broken out. And one witness says he saw dark smoke coming from the airport.
We were doing some plane spotting over on that plaza over there at the intersection, and we saw something, some big smoke coming over the airport. So we rushed here to check out what exactly was happening.
Again, at least 17 people were hurt. Airport officials described the injuries as, quote, relatively minor, and said that a child and 2 adults were transported to local hospitals. The president and the CEO of the Toronto airport thanked first responders, crediting their quick response for ensuring that everyone made it off that plane alive. Now, 2 runways remain closed as part of the investigation. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada is going to take charge with the NTSB and the FAA. They're also going to send investigators from the United States. Ryan.
Well, Devin, and the plane flipping over in Toronto comes after a series of aviation accidents in the recent weeks that have rattled U.S. travelers. On January 29th, a regional American Airlines jetliner and an Army helicopter collided near Reagan National Airport in Washington, D.C., killing 67 people. A few days later, on January 31st, a medical transportation plane carrying a child patient crashed in Philadelphia, killing 6 people on board and another person on the ground. And plane accidents like these always spark the question, is it safe to fly? I spoke with former pilot and aviation expert Captain Ross Sagan about today's crash in Toronto and the state of aviation safety in general.
It's very obvious that they were in some really harrowing weather conditions with strong gusty winds, snow, and what we call clutter on the runway. Icy conditions, temperature sounded like it was around 18 or so was the last I heard. So a very challenging situation weather-wise.
So it looks like weather will play a factor as we learn more about the investigation.
I think weather is going to be a big player, and I think procedures will also be come into play, especially with regard to the crosswind components. Those crosswind components that we hear bantered on the media right now are all demonstrated crosswind components. That is the maximum crosswind that the manufacturer was able to show that the aircraft could land. It was a maximum. It is not a limit. Pilots are free to land with more, but it's at their own risk and certainly not good judgment in my estimation.
Is there a concern for passengers who may be wondering about the safety of flying?
Well, I too am very concerned, and my friends and relatives are all always asking me, is it safe to fly? Well, I think generally it's safe. I do not think it's as safe as a lot of officials would like to have you realize. If you look in the past 12 months, we've had about 300 serious close calls. The runway incursion rate is up at record levels.
And against that backdrop, the Trump administration is firing several hundred workers at the Federal Aviation Administration. Probationary workers at the FAA started getting notices on Friday. The impacted workers include systems specialists, safety inspectors, and administrative staff. The firings do not include air traffic controllers who are in short supply amid a decades-long staffing shortage.